Yo, book nerds. Happy New Year. I hope that your holiday was awesome. I had set some reading goals for 2021. I didn't have this channel back then, so there's no video for that, but I wanted to go through what those goals were and how I did on them. For 2021, I set a reading goal of 9 books. I know that is way lower than most booktubers, but for me, that's pretty good. And normally I read like 10 to 12 books a year. That is my kind of capacity right now. But I set it at 9 because I was going into 2021 with a new baby, and then a bunch of other stuff happened that made my life really crazy, like getting divorced and moving twice, and yeah. So I'm glad that I set that goal at 9 because anything more than that may not have been feasible for me. I was able to hit that goal. I'm going to go through what books I read and give kind of a quick overview of what I thought of them, but I'm not going to go super in-depth because I have dedicated reviews for most of these books already, and I will link those in the description. So the first 4 books that I read in 2021 was The Hobbit and then The Lord of the Rings. So it's The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. And I am going to count The Lord of the Rings as 3 books. I know it's technically 1, but this is my channel and I can do what I want. And so I'm going to count these as 4. These are all obviously by J.R.R. Tolkien. We'll start with The Hobbit. I did enjoy this book. It was quite different than I thought it was going to be. I knew it was an adventure. I knew about the ring. I didn't know much more than that. I knew Tolkien had got his inspiration from Beowulf, which I have also read, and I did see how Beowulf influenced him as he wrote this. However, some of the narration didn't connect with me a whole lot because sometimes you got told a lot of the action. Like Bilbo gets hit on the head and then when he wakes up, they tell him what he missed. And that just isn't really my style. It wasn't bad, and I really did like the story. It was very interesting and it kept me reading. But just some of the way that it was told didn't connect with me a whole ton, but I still really, really enjoyed it. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, for saying that, but I did like it overall. I did really enjoy it and I will read it again. The Lord of the Rings I loved. I could not put them down. Oh my gosh, I can see the evolution in Tolkien's writing by the time that he wrote these, and it just brings everything full circle, and yes, I loved them. If you haven't read them, you should. I don't know why it took me so long to read this. This kind of brings me into another one of my goals. Besides just reading 9 books this year, I had a goal to read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, finally. I mean, come on, I'm a reader, and I hadn't read these books, and all readers have read these books, right? And they love them, and I knew I was missing out, but I just hadn't read them yet, and so I had decided that 2021 I was finally going to read them, and I did, and I'm so happy I did. They were amazing. I loved them so much. Was not disappointed at all. I know I said that The Hobbit didn't fully connect with me, but still it wasn't a disappointment. I really loved reading it. I got a lot of enjoyment out of all of these. After that, I read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. And I know technically this is 2 books, but I'm going to count it as 1 because, again, it's my channel and I can do what I want. So it kind of offsets what I did with Lord of the Rings, sort of. So this is book number 5 for the year. I just adored this book. This book was probably my favorite read the entire year, which honestly it was probably really hard to beat The Lord of the Rings. I absolutely adored The Lord of the Rings, so it is so hard to, I don't know that I could pick a favorite book this year because I read so much good stuff this year. But One of the other goals that I had this year was to read this book because Alice in Wonderland is my absolute favorite Disney movie, and my daughter was going to turn 1 and I threw her an Alice in Wonderland birthday party, and before her party I wanted to have this book read so that I could get some more inspiration for her party, and also just so I could see what had influenced the movie that I loved so much as a kid and still love to this day. And I just adored this. This was so fun. It just made me love the Disney movie more, and I just have such an appreciation for it, and the nostalgia reading this was just, yes, just awesome. I just could not put it down. It was just so adorable, so fun, so absurd, and I loved it. Definitely did not disappoint me at all. I do have a dedicated review for Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. I don't have individual videos for The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, but I have one video for The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. It's just kind of a personal video, not really an in-depth review, but I will link both of those in the description like I said before. Next up, I read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I have a review for this too, and this was great. I have not read much horror, and this was kind of a sci-fi horror novel, and wow, I flew through it. Yes, loved it. I love classics, and so Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Frankenstein were just, yes. They were just so fun for me. This was just so good, it had me on the edge of my seat. I read this around Halloween time, and I just couldn't put it down because you didn't know if you could trust Frankenstein, you didn't know if you could trust the monster. They have differing opinions on things, and you get both sides of their stories, and you don't really know who you can trust, and it's just so good. It is just so good. If you haven't read it, you should. Then I read Glensheens Daughter, the Marjorie Congdon story. I read this for Nonfiction November. I did a review for this too. This book was so great. I love reading nonfiction because it helps me broaden my mind in a different way than fiction does, and I learned something along the way. And this was personal to me because it's about something that happened in Minnesota, and I live in Minnesota. And it was so well written, I couldn't put it down. This is one of the best nonfiction books I've ever read. And I buddy read this, which made it all the more fun. So definitely recommend checking this out. It's about the Glensheen murders. This book has everything, for real. It's got the millionaire, it's got murder, it's got the misunderstood child, it's got arson, it's got everything. It is just insane that this is a real story. After Glensheens Daughter, I decided to read Contemplative Prayer by Thomas Merton. This is another classic, but this is a nonfiction classic, and it's religious. And this book really challenged me. It was not what I was expecting at all. I don't think that fun is the right word to describe what I felt when I read this, but it wasn't a disappointment. I actually did learn a lot from it, but it was definitely an exercise of the mind to get through it. It was written for monks. I'm obviously not a monk. I didn't know that going into it, and so it was definitely above my level on a lot of the theological stuff that they talk about, but I did get a lot of good things out of it because I'm a Christian, and his ideas on prayer are really good. I actually really connected with them once I was able to tease them out of what he was saying. But it was really good. It's really short, so if you want to give it a go, it's not a huge commitment. And I will also link the review for this in the description. And lastly, I read Life is Messy by Matthew Kelly. This book was awesome. I loved this. It's another nonfiction book. Matthew Kelly is a Catholic author, but this book is not strictly Catholic. There are Christian undertones, but they're not super heavy either. So if you're not Catholic, for sure, you could still read this. If you're not Christian, you could still read it and just kind of ignore the God parts if you wanted. But you don't have to be Catholic to get something out of this at all. By the time that I post this video, I will not have the review up for this yet, but I will soon. I don't know exactly when, but watch for this because it will be coming, and I want to talk about this book because it's so good. And life really is messy, and I think we all can attest to that these last couple years with COVID. And in my personal life, these last couple years have been just kind of a crapshoot, to be honest. This book was something that I didn't know I needed in my life, and I'm so glad that I read it. So those were the 9 books that I read this year. I wish I could have read more, but it was a crazy year. I am so happy that I finally read The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, and I'm so happy that I finally read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Those were the big ones on my TBR this year, and I'm so glad that I got to them finally. The other ones that I read this year were not a disappointment either. I had no DNFs this year, and I had no books that I outright hated, so that was awesome. I did read another book for work, but I'm not going to talk about that here. I'm only going to talk about the books that I read personally. I obviously also read a ton of books to my daughter, but those were all picture books. Not going to talk about those books. But that is another reason why I only read 9 books this year, because I spent a lot of time reading books to my daughter, and I want to foster a love of reading for her. So I had to sacrifice some of my personal reading time so that I could read with her, and I would not trade that for the world. It is so fun watching her face light up when I grab a book. And she is 13 months old, and she already gets so excited. Her favorite book is Llama Llama Red Pajama. And she is so cute because there's a picture in that book of the mom and the baby llama kissing, and every time we open that page, she leans in and kisses the page. She's so dang cute, and I'm so glad that I can read to her and create this bond with her through books. I hope you guys had some great reads this year. I am so happy with what I read this year. And I am so happy that I hit my goals. Did you hit your reading goals? Let me know what your goals were in the comments and how you did on them. I'm planning to get a video up soon on what my goals are for 2022, so watch for that as well. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Happy New Year, and thanks for talking books with me.